Hello you absolute termites, and welcome back to the channel. It's me, Epic, and after spending 9 hours watching rap videos with Marvin Gaye's Let's Get It On loop, I think it's finally time that I give my opinion on the latest DLC in Wonderlands. Over the past 24 hours, I've had so many comments on videos, on Twitter. I think the Reddit's probably throwing some kind of quinceañera for me. I gotta be honest, I don't even know what that word means, but I'm finally here today to give you my unbiased opinion on the DLC, which is probably going to get me booted off of everything that exists, but honesty has to remain intact, and so does transparency, so here we go. I think I'm going to upset a lot of people with this video because this is not going to be a bash fest on 2K and Gearbox. I know that's what everybody wants right now, everyone has their pitchforks out, but that's not what this video is going to be, at least not from my perception. Because if I'm being completely honest with you guys, I actually like some of the things in the DLC, which I'm going to talk about later. But in order to sustain my standing in the YouTube algorithm, let's go ahead and get the negatives over with right away. And I'm going to give you my elevator pitch on the latest DLC. I, EpicNNG, personally feel as though DLC 1 Coiled Captors is a DLC which should have been marketed as a headhunter and not as one of the 4 main DLCs in Wonderlands. The DLC, start to finish, was around 10 minutes long. 15 minutes if you're playing a Clawbringer, F's in the chat, but the point here is that the DLC Gearbox released yesterday, for those who aren't in the loop, was extremely short and extremely disappointing. Now, in terms of its length, there wasn't much there. It was pretty much 5 rooms in the same layout as your typical Chaos Chamber, where you'd go in there, do a mini objective like shoot a totem pole or pin the tail on the donkey, and then you move on to the next room until finally you're faced with the boss battle. And that's it. That's where the DLC ends. You go back to the new DLC hub, you have some of the new lost souls, and then you spin them on the Wheel of Fate, which is basically just a worse Chaos Chamber bunny. But as if that wasn't bad enough, yesterday's DLC launch was a train wreck, because when the DLC launched, various enemies in the DLC had missing names. Like, I'm not joking, that's literally the name of the enemy, it's missing name, and unless that's just a really creative name given to a baby from like Kim Kardashian, you know, you've got like Northwest Silver Spoon Fork, like I don't know, maybe it was just some weird name given to one of the sharks, but yesterday was a train wreck. You know, the DLC came out, there was a lot of issues, it was very clearly unfinished. One of the rooms you straight up have to wait around for 3 whole minutes just to progress, no matter how fast you kill enemies, or so I've been told. I honestly can't be bothered to go in there and try to find out for myself. And to top that all off, as part of yesterday's massive train wreck, a train wreck which would even scare Wilhelm, rest in peace the homie, the initial plan for this DLC was that every week you would go back into the mirror with a brand new difficulty, and you would face a more souped up version of the boss with new mechanics, and you'd also get a new cutscene going in. However, unfortunately, Gearbox messed up, and yesterday, when the DLC launched, they launched it with all 4 difficulties, essentially completely ruining their plan for the 4-week content that they were going to draw out. Which means players were able to get in and play through the entirety of these difficulties. They played through all 4 of them. It got leaked everywhere on YouTube, and I want to be clear, this is not the fault of the players, because they had basically no idea, and neither did a lot of the content creators that streamed it. This was purely a mess up on Gearbox's side, and as a result, a lot of players got to play through the whole of it, and players actually enjoyed what they played a lot more than just the 10 minutes they will now get if they log into the game, because it was soon fixed. But as a result of this, players have come to the realization that over the next 3 weeks, they're going to be playing the same content they could be playing right now, and as such are mad at Gearbox for withholding content. Now, let me remove my silk robe here and just show you it all. I'm going to put it all on display here by telling you guys that I actually enjoy what Gearbox was going for with the whole comeback next week for new content. I actually really like that. Now, before the YouTube martyrs get me in a fucking noose and hang me, is that going to get me demonetized? I don't know, but before the YouTube comment section goes crazy at me, let me first say, while I am okay with the idea of coming back next week for more content, the actual content that players have to play right now while they wait for next week's update to the mirrors is absolutely laughable. Charging players, whether or not it be $10 or $20 or even $5 for this DLC, and giving them 10 minutes of content and then making them wait a whole another week just to unlock another 10 minutes of content is terrible. It is absolutely terrible. Now, let me say that again, regarding the whole waiting for content thing, I absolutely love that idea, because in between the updates each week with the featured runs in the Chaos Chamber, sometimes the weapon buffs, sometimes unfortunately the nerfs, there is a lot to do in between the time that you'll be waiting to unlock that next difficulty in the mirrors. And people who eventually play this DLC, when they wait for it to come out on Steam or whatever it may be, probably are not even going to have to wait for this. So I actually don't mind it, and it's a feature which a lot of other games, live service included, like Destiny, have implemented very, very well. Destiny does a seasons feature where every week you get in at reset and there's a brand new little mini mission you do with a cutscene, and it gives you some more story, and I really, really like that. However, the difference here is that when Destiny does it, in the meantime, there's actually a lot of content to do in between that. But I don't feel like the same can be said for Wonderlands, as when this content dropped, they're making players wait next week, and in the meantime, you are literally playing something which Jolt's dude has speedrun in about 7 minutes. To top it off, if you die in these new mirrors, it will send you straight back to the hub, so it's not even like you can just spend time in these worlds exploring them and enjoying them, because if you die, they just send you back. It's not like you can just respawn in there, so it's kind of like its own little rip-off of the Chaos Chamber. But speaking of the Chaos Chamber, I want to talk about the loot that was introduced with this DLC, because I think this is where a lot of people are going to be surprised. The biggest L for me with this DLC is the loot. I personally think that the loot in the Coiled Captors DLC is some of the laziest stuff we have seen since they added the See and Dead in Borderlands 3. I don't want to take up too much of your time here today, but to give you a little play-by-play of my experience of the DLC yesterday, my first kill on the boss actually dropped me a brand new spell called the Tidebreaker, which would send out a wave which would apply a debuff to enemies called Soaked, which would then make them take more damage from shock and cryo damage. And I actually thought this was a really, really great mechanic. I thought finally we'd have a spell which would rival the Buffmeister, and I thought it would really, really shake up the meta. But unfortunately, the longer I played, the worse this got, because I then found there was a rocket launcher which did the same soaked mechanic, better than the spell could, but there wasn't really a difference. It's just that the rocket could apply it faster because it was a rocket and not a spell with a cooldown. But this then got even worse, because then I stumbled across a class mod which can apply the soaked effect by just simply critting enemies, and on top of that, it also has more effectiveness, essentially power creeping the other two items in the DLC. And this really frustrates me, because I thought the soaked mechanic was a really, really cool idea. And while I'm sure the defense to this is going to be, yes, but Epic, you can make a full soaked loadout, I just can't get behind it. I think it's extremely gimmicky, extremely novelty, and way too niche to be slotted into a 10-minute slip and slide. I don't understand this. It doesn't make a lot of sense to me personally, and I know I'm probably going to disagree with a lot of people on that, but I really don't like the whole soaked mechanic being applied to half of the gear. But aside from that, I also just felt like most of the gear as a whole was pretty uninspired. There's a new TDR that shoots dice, and then you throw it and it makes a dice, but it just feels like yet another gimmicky weapon, which is something which you guys might know I have been pretty much against. I'm not a big fan of these whole gimmicky, like, shoot marshmallow, shoot jello cube weapons. I think they're cool, I think they're funny, but I don't think it should make up 90% of the gear we've got. And now in the first DLC, we've got an item that just straight up is a dice thrower. And I'm not saying that it can't be good, I'm not saying it can't be powerful or anything like that. I just didn't want to see this kind of stuff return in our first DLC. I thought it would have been even cooler to get some legitimately badass gear, but it doesn't seem like that's what happened here. Now, it's not all rainstorms, because there is some sunshine here. There's a clearing in the forest for you guys, and I've honestly got to say that aside from the extremely disappointing DLC yesterday, the patch that was released in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands is legitimately amazing. While it did in turn actually break a few things, like I know the bank now just feels absolutely horrendous to use, the main changes that were implemented yesterday with the patch to Wonderlands is absolutely fantastic, and I think it's absolutely commendable too. Seriously, good job to the team over at Gearbox who put all of that work into this patch. But yeah, I just wanted to go ahead and talk to you guys about the new DLC today because a lot of people, like countless amounts of people I've seen mentioning me, asking for my take on this, so there it is. I think going forward, the best case scenario here from Gearbox's point of view would be to completely delay the rest of the DLCs, because honestly, I don't think another release like this is going to go down well with the community at all. So if there's any advice you can take away from this, Gearbox, is that going forward, I would highly recommend just straight up delay the rest of the DLCs in the Season Pass, flesh them out more, give them more content, because man, this just wasn't the play. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you're all enjoying the patch other than that, and yeah, feel free to stop by our Twitch streams at EpicNNG if you want to increase the amount of sex you get. And also, I should let you guys know before we go any further here that code NNG is currently 30% off at G Fuel. So if you want to pick up some G Fuel and save yourself a ton of money, then go ahead and use code NNG. Thank you for everyone that's been using the code. I greatly appreciate that. With that being said, boys, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.